Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. On today's show, we are concluding the discussion about my annual Ranking Every Raptor column that goes up at Raptors HQ about this time every single year, where I rank every single player in Toronto Raptors history from bottom to top. And this is the fun stuff. This is the top 124 we're digging into after going through the first half of the list on Tuesday with Josh Kern from Raptors HQ. I'm joined on today's show to be grilled by Freddie Rivas from the wonderful Confederacy of Dunks podcast. He's going to tell me why I'm wrong, why I'm right, and everything in between for this year's list as we get to names like Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, who has a pretty interesting leap and into the top 10. A few other interesting guys as well. OG Anunoby, Chris Boucher with the big jump, and the highest riser of this year's rankings as well, Stanley Johnson, will come up today as well. That's all coming up on today's show with Freddie Rivas talking Ranking Every Raptor, coming up in just a second.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1022 of Locked On Raptors for Friday, September the 23rd. I'm your host, Sean Woodley of RaptorsHQ.com. You can find me on Twitter as always, at WoodleySean. You can support the podcast wherever you like podcasts as well, on Twitter at Locked On Raptors, on all your favorite podcast apps, and of course on YouTube, where you can subscribe and be a pal and be a part of our little online YouTube community. So with that, thank you for being here. Thanks for making this the first listen of the day. And let's get to today's show with a wonderful guest, a returning guest of the show, a frequent mailbag question asker as well. It is Freddie Rivas from the wonderful Confederacy of Dunks podcast. Freddie, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good, man. Always happy to be on the show. Always happy to comment with some questions on Twitter,
Yeah, we love having you be part of the show in all different forms and fashions, Freddie, and very happy to have you here today as you were granted special behind-the-scenes access. We're recording this on Thursday before the top 124 of Ranking Every Raptor is posted to RaptorsHQ.com. This podcast posting after that posts, but I gave you the list ahead of time so we could chat about it just because schedules work that way, and it just lined up for us to do it tonight. So yeah, we're going to dig into the top half of this year's version of Ranking Every Raptor. Once again, if you're not familiar with Ranking Every Raptor, it is an annual piece I do for RaptorsHQ.com. This is the fourth version of it. It takes way too much time. I think way too much about where their dude should slot in, whether they should be ranked ahead of or behind Pops Mensah Bonsu and other names like that. It's a strange exercise, but if you're a diehard Raptors fan, you're probably dig it a little bit. So, Freddie, you yourself are a diehard Raptors fan, and we're going to dig into the top half of the rankings today. We'll get to the sort of top 10-ish guys, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, the fringe top 10 guys like Norman Powell, who, of course, is no longer with the team, but was, of course, a big part of the team last season before the deadline. We'll get to them later on in the show, but we'll start near the middle, I guess, of the rankings. We left off with Yuta Watanabe as player number 125, and we move into the sort of top half of the list, and I guess the place to start here, I don't really feel like talking about Terrence Davis, honestly. He was really bad. Probably shouldn't have been playing at the start of the season before his court case was figured out. They got a second-round pick for him. Fine, whatever. I'm glad to not have to talk about Terrence Davis anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do want to ask you about Stanley Johnson, who is this year's biggest riser. He was 195 after the 2019-20 season, and this past year, without having to do a whole lot, because really it's not that difficult to jump in the middle part of these rankings because a lot of these guys played like 30 games for the team. Stanley Johnson moves from number 125 to number 117, a 78 spot jump, by far the biggest jump on the board here, on the strength of that time where he was, for a second, the best center the Raptors had on the team. He played a lot this year, varying degrees of success. I think there was kind of a crescendo of good Stanley Johnson middle of the season. Everything around it was kind of what you expect from Stanley Johnson. But Freddie, is Stanley Johnson a worthy climber of 78 spots in the rankings to you? Was this surprising to you, or does this feel like it's just about right? He is sandwiched in between Joey Dorsey and Quincy Acey, our favorite undersized big men with large shoulders. Stanley Johnson himself is muscly with shoulders. He fits into this group perfectly, I think.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the Stanimal. He's not light in the butt, so he fits there too. And reading this whole list, and I have to say too, Pops Mensah Bonsu and names like that, like I know I'm in the right place. I'm with my people. Yeah, no, it's Stanimo is a good example to me of even when the Raptors aren't super successful at development, they can turn a guy into the most productive version of himself.
Sure.
And like I even felt good that he got a contract with the Bulls this year. Like, I don't know if I would want him on this new era of the Raptors, but I feel like he was entertaining. He had that that game winner. I don't know if it was against the Nuggets in the bubble. He definitely was a guy that just kept working and wasn't always in Nurse's good books. But I think he's a good example. He was drafted pretty high too by the Pistons and committed to going to the Raptors G League. Like he's someone who worked really hard, and I think not every guy that works really hard is going to become a starter. So he's very worthy of traveling a long distance in your insane categorization of the Raptors.
I think the thing about Stanley that you forget is, he was like a vibes champion of the team for a couple of years there, particularly last season, but even the year before when things weren't going so well for him. And when he did play, it was kind of a disaster. Like you mentioned, he willingly went down to the 905. He did not have to. You only have to you only get sent there sort of against your will in your first 2 seasons. After that, you need to give permission. And he's, like you said, a former lottery pick. Like, he very easily could have said, I'm not going to the G League. I'm a lottery pick. You're going to deal with it. And it's fine. But he was very eager to do that, which I thought was great. And then this season, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of all the minutes Stanley Johnson played this season, but also what were the other options? It was a pretty slim pickings there with all the bodies that were out for COVID and injury and all this stuff. And so, I think just based on the strength that he was kind of there all year and did have those moments as like a small ball 5 where he was making passes. He was hitting threes at like a reasonable rate this season as well, which we never really had seen from him before. I totally respect the season Stanley Johnson put in. He was no longer a guy that kind of made my eyes roll when he went on the floor. He wasn't like in the Patrick McCaw zone or anything like that. Certainly not like a guy that I'm upset about not being part of the long-term plans or anything like that. But as far as like likable, workman-like players, he ranks pretty high. And I think kind of fittingly is in between guys like Quincy AC and Joey Dorsey, kind of in that same milieu. Other guys in this tier of the rankings, Freddie. So DeAndre Bembry comes in at 112. And of all the guys, I kind of went through the sort of back end of the roster, and I think he kind of ended up being the highest rated of all those guys last season. I guess first, do you agree with that? Was there someone else from the roster last year who was sort of in that sort of back half of the roster, the Utah, Patrick McCaw, all those other guys that would have been in the first part of the rankings that we talked about on Tuesday? Am I right in putting DeAndre Bembry as the top ranked guy of that bunch, or is he maybe a little bit overranked here at number 112, sandwiched in between, of course, the wonderful players who are Zahn Tabak and Ed Pinckney?
Yeah, I don't know if this is unexciting, but I don't have the strongest opinions about Bembry. Sure. I was excited about him as a Raptor. I feel like he was one of the guys that didn't get a fair shake by Nurse, but it seemed like it took him a while to get, kind of in the rotation. Then I think he was one of the guys that, fell ill to COVID, and it just seemed like he could have been a bigger part of the team last year, but before, anything could really manifest for him, it was like, the season was over and nothing matters, and looks like he's not coming back. So I feel like he's sadly kind of just like a blip on the Raptors radar. Like maybe, I guess you can't keep rising Stanley, but I maybe even have Stanley over him. One guy I was thinking about is McCaw. And not because McCaw is good, just because I like weird Raptors things, and the championship lore, the fact that he was won 3 rings in a row, 2 with Golden State, 1 with us. And all the Raptors champions for me, I don't like when I was reading your list, it was like I was finding ways in my head for all the different champions to like work themselves up a couple slots.
That's
so
fair.
Yeah.
I should note that Malcolm Miller became the first ever person who was on the list to interact with the list earlier this week. He replied with a little shoulder shrug emoji at where I had put him. I think he wanted to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to bump Malcolm Miller up next year based on the strength of that shoulder shrug emoji tweet.
Yes. 100%.
Going into that, guy who is on the championship t-shirt, yes, he gets a bit of a bump. I don't disagree with you there, Freddie. That's a pretty good point. With Bembry, I think it was that, like, the reason I kind of have an affinity for him is that when they were at their best, he was at their best. He was at his best, sorry. Like, he was really good just kind of connecting the best players on the team. Like, he was a wonderful fifth option. Yeah, he wasn't much of a shooter, but like a really good cutter, great defender, like little tertiary sort of ball handling chops.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a bummer that his season went the way it did, because when everyone went down in March, he was kind of left there like the second ball handler on the team. And that was not the role DeAndre Bembry should be playing. Like, he has those point guard instincts from when he was at St. Joe's and was the point guard there for 4 years. But like, that's just not his bag in the NBA. He's not much of a guy who can blow by dudes. He's not much of a shooter, a pull-up guy, or anything like that. And I think he was miscast down the stretch of the season as like one of the lead ball handlers for the team. And it was unfortunate that it went the way it did. I think he's going to be awesome on the Nets this year. Like, I think he's the perfect kind of guy to just, do the Bruce Brown thing and be like a wonderful role player between all the superstars. And I'm sad we don't get to see more of it. He was a wonderful vibes guy too. It's a shame we didn't get more of like him in Toronto. I feel like he would have been a fan favorite. Good quote and all that stuff, if not for all the Zooms. But yeah, DeAndre Bembry comes in at number 112. And then we move into the top 100, where we're going to have, I think, some more sort of notable names, obviously, and guys who were big parts of last year's team and figure to be even bigger parts of the team coming up next season. We'll get to that in a second here, Freddie. But first, should tell you about our friends over at Built Bar, who are making the best tasting protein bars I've ever had. And I'm not much of a person who's ever liked protein bars before. They're kind of gritty. They're kind of sandy tasting. Built Bar does not have that problem whatsoever. They taste like a regular candy bar, and they have 9 amazing flavors in their staple lineup for you to check out. They've got flavors like mint brownie and salted caramel, strawberry orange, which is surprisingly excellent. And they also have limited time flavors too, like cookie dough chunk, which is in my fridge right now, and I can't wait to mow through that box. I'm trying to hold back a little bit because they're going to be something that I like. As soon as I start eating them, they're going to be gone. So I haven't yet had one, but I know it's going to be good. Cookie dough chunk is available on the site right now for a limited time, and you can get all those staple flavors or the limited time options when you go to built.com. And when you use the promo code LOCKED15, you're going to get 15% off of your order. That is the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Go get yourself some Built Bars. All right, Freddie, let's continue on here and get into the top 100 of ranking every Raptor. At number 89, I have Malachi Flynn coming in. And then just a little bit ahead of him, Khem, Birch, Gary Trent Jr. at 82 and 81, respectively. It might seem weird that I have two guys who played fewer games combined than Malachi Flynn played for the Raptors this past season ahead of Malachi Flynn. I have reasoning for it, but I'll go to you first here, Freddie. Do you have any qualms with where I've ranked Flynn, Trent, or Khem Birch? Of course, Gary Trent Jr., the second Gary Trent to appear on the list, as Gary Trent Sr. comes in the hundreds somewhere. I don't know exactly where. I don't want to. I can't find it at the moment. But either way, he comes in at 123. So he just starts off today's list. Either way, any issues with Flynn at 89, Birch at 82, Trent at 81?
No, I like that you have Trent and Birch ahead of Flynn. I also feel like, like Malachi was, I don't know if I'm just too focused on development here, but he seemed like another guy that like he's going to rise a lot on the list, I feel like. Yeah. But right now he just, wasn't able to get, with Lowry and Fred, there just wasn't really space for him. Trent is like, I just, side note on him, I love that he just debuts ahead of his dad. That's great.
I thought about putting them together for like symmetry's sake, but it seemed unfair to Gary Trent, who like already has like the 8th highest scoring game in Raptors history in 17 games played.
Yeah, I was watching the other night, his game winner, and just like the way he carried the ball up the court. I don't know if it was Saturansky, but like that just it was a very like dramatic play. And in a season as rough as that Tampa season, like you gotta give big love to someone who like has a moment like that. Like this isn't a part of the discussion, but I have to bring up, just because of like weird Raptors lore, if you could make a way for Derek Martin to, be in the top 100, that stupid 3-point streak mattered to me so much at the time.
Yep.
And the fact that he kept it alive, like, not really, but yeah,
he was in the top 100 of the original list. There have been too many new guys in the last 4 years. They've bumped him out, but you make a good
that's
point.
Very fair.
The 3 to keep the Mavs streak alive is, until like Fred VanVleet started hitting all those threes against the Bucks, the biggest 3 in franchise history.
Right? It was like, it was a big deal. Like, I'm going to say Khem Birch is also where he needs to be. I feel like, touching on part 1 a little bit, hearing you talk about just people did pile on Baines, but I think Khem also did prove that the mercenary center strategy could have worked. And, and I don't know if it's like the Magic are just so poor at developing guys or what, but Khem, like he came in excited. He's a Canadian guy, and just like he hit a couple threes. I don't know if he's a 3-point shooter, but he just seemed to be like so coachable instantly. And I wouldn't call him like a lob threat, or I feel even if he's our starting center this year, I don't think that's like the best case scenario, but I feel like he'll be able to incorporate himself in the system pretty well, and already did. And like, as soon as he got there, you could just see life was so much easier for Pascal, for OG, for Kyle. And again, like I feel like now I'm piling on Pains, but just let's look.
Okay, everybody's got to do it. Everyone's got to get it out of the systems. Yeah,
it's hard not to, because it's like that's the reference. Like, and I was excited about Aaron Baines, which makes me whatever. Khem is good. He's where he belongs. Trent too, I think, because they'll both also potentially climb up the list. I mean, Gary Trent for sure, I think, is going to climb.
Oh, I think both are going to, like, again, we're still in the range where like Jermaine O'Neal is at number 74. So it's not exactly difficult to climb. We're still in the range of guys who spent 1 year with the team in a lot of cases. So just by virtue of getting a second year's worth of stats, or a full season's worth of stats in the case of Birch and Trent, like they're going to climb closer to the top 50 by virtue of just being there, and also figuring to have pretty prominent roles this season. Yeah, I figured putting them together made a lot of sense too, just because both kind of came in around the same time, both played similar amounts of games, both had like pretty, important roles during the time they were playing. Obviously, Trent missed time, and then he really struggled in his last 10 or so games after coming out guns a-blazing. But he came out so guns a-blazing early on that I figure you have to put him up there at 81. He hit not only the 44-point game on 17 of 19 shooting that I went back and looked up today, but also had the game winner against the Wizards in like his 3rd game with the team, and didn't miss a shot, it seemed, for his first few games there. So I think that is, I'm glad you don't totally disagree with where I've got them ranked. I was worried I might have put them a little too high, but they were 17 and 19 games, but they were pretty damn good 17 and 19 games for those guys. Let's take a quick look at Chris Boucher, the second highest riser on the list this season. Goes from number 88 up to number 50, into the top 50, and you figures to keep on climbing. I don't know if I'm wrong with this with Chris Boucher. I have him sandwiched in between right now Oliver Miller at 49, Rasho Nesterovic at 51, Bismack Biyombo 52, Jakob Poeltl 53. It's kind of like a big man run there. Am I too low on Boucher? I always find myself seeming like the guy who doesn't like Chris Boucher, and that's not true, because I do like Chris Boucher a lot. I think he's a delightful player to watch, wonderful player to have on your team for an 82-game regular season where things need to be exciting. He's outstanding for that. Playoff-wise, I'm still not totally convinced that he's going to be any sort of meaningful contributor when things really get down to the wire, but maybe that doesn't matter right now. Am I too low on Boucher, too high? Do I have it just right? Have I found the Goldilocks zone with Chris Boucher? What do you think here, Freddie?
Okay, so this is our first, I don't want to say disagreement, but I do feel like he could be a little bit higher. I'm just looking at the list now. Oliver Miller is obviously classic. Kevin Willis like had his own type of dream shake, but I think Jamario Moon had some highlights, but Boucher, he was, again, I'm going back to our development system, but like he's a big part of the Raptors 905. I'm pretty sure he won a Defensive Player of the Year there, and then
and MVP.
And MVP. My God, sorry. That's much better. But he's a huge part of like this team's vibe and this transitional vibe. Like, I guess I can't give him points for this year, but he had, some big stat lines. And I think, I think it was right before the pandemic, time's all weird, obviously, but he had that Laker game that was just incredible where, I think he, like in LA, blocked AD, I think maybe blocked LeBron also. Like it was just
the game. Kyle had gotten hurt the game prior, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is going to be what sends them on their death spiral towards trading everyone at the deadline." And then that like bizarro benched group of Rondé, Redacted, and Birch just like, or sorry, not Birch, Chris Boucher just like totally took over in that Lakers game. I remember tweeting in the first quarter of that Lakers game after Chris Boucher made like a poor play. I don't think Chris Boucher is an NBA player as much as we'd like his passport, or as much as his passport, makes us want him to be. And then went on the Chris Boucher run that continues to this day. So I'm an idiot, I guess.
I'll say this so you don't feel alone. I remember telling a close friend that I don't think the Raptors can ever be competitive with Boucher playing meaningful minutes.
Sure.
But I don't know. He's kind of an interesting player because I feel like he never, he keeps running up against this thing where it's like he's tall, play him at center. And I just feel like he's a pretty good wing and a not good center. And hopefully that's solved this year, but I feel like that's a big part of his career with the Raptors has, been us slotting him. Like, I hope, obviously Pascal's going to be out for a bit, but I hope Boucher is just like locked into Pascal's backup and is told that, you can just fire away, dude. Just go for it from three all year. Cause he's just developed so well. And like his wing defense is good. And I do think he suffers from trying to do Nurse's system where he's like running around like crazy and trying to block shots. Like as much as, those 3-point blocks look good, there's definitely a bunch of plays where he's like fouling a guy on three, and it's frustrating.
He's not exactly like the disciplined closeout artist that Pascal is. And, it's hard to be that because Pascal's really freaking good at that. With Boucher, I think he'll be better off as like a full-time 4. And I'm hoping that's the role for him, with Birch and Achua likely taking the minutes at the 5. And even if they're going to go with like an OG Siakam Boucher front court for times to like close games, which I could totally see, I would hope that OG is kind of the nominal center there. And you have Boucher kind of doing the wing thing, because the dirty little secret about Chris Boucher is he's like actually a shooting guard. He's just very tall. Like, that's what he is. He's a shooting guard. And he just can't really kind of hang positionally defensively at the 2. So you have to play him in the front court because he's tall. But I think you get the best out of him when you're playing him next to like a stationary big. We saw that like the best moments for Baines last year were next to Boucher, and Boucher kind of vice versa. Some of his best moments were playing the 4 next to Baines. And so, I think Boucher and Achua is going to be a fun front court. I think Boucher and Birch, whenever they play together, if, Boucher starts next to Birch with Pascal out at the start of the year, I think that's going to work well. I think the roster's kind of built so it's not like, okay, Chris Boucher is the team's only guy who we can kind of pass as a center. I guess he's playing 25 minutes at center tonight. That's not going to be a thing. I think it might just be a closing time thing where they can kind of, use the matchup, switch a whole bunch and make it work. So I think Boucher is in for a pretty big rise. So if you're disappointed in his ranking this year, Freddie, I feel like he's going to be like, if
I'm furious.
The rate he's been on, like top 40 for sure at some point soon here. Like I guess, okay, let me pose this to you. Corey Joseph is at 30, currently the highest ranking Canadian on the list. Do you think Chris Boucher passes Corey Joseph? Obviously, it's entirely determined by me, so it's hard to predict. But I could just easily go, oh, he's one behind Corey Joseph to go back and retroactively make you wrong. I won't do that because I'm not a monster. But do you think he stands a chance by the end of this season surpassing Corey Joseph as the best Canadian in Raptors history?
I think he's got a pretty good chance. Like, it's starting to get like, we're not quite in the journeyman territory of your list. So like, I think you do have to have some Raptors credentials, but yeah, if he has another, solid season, if he's like part of some type of, bench mob, like, if he's part of a good unit and contributes to some wins, like I think this Raptors team, is going to be maybe not top heavy, but deep in a weird way. And I think, part of its identity is going to be like long limbs, and he's a part of that. And I think he's going to be a good part of it.
Yeah, the talent at the top end might not be awesome, but they're extremely flush with long weirdos, and that is going to be awesome. Freddie, we're going to get into the top part of the list, the top 20-ish range here, and talk about OG Anunoby, Norman Powell, of course, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and Kyle Lowry, who still happens to be number one. Not much drama there. He's Kyle freaking Lowry. He's not going anywhere despite leaving the team this year. We'll get to that in 1 second, Freddie. But first, I want to tell you, the people out there, about rockauto.com. You should be going to Rock Auto if you need parts for your car. It's simple as that. I am a car dum-dum. I know nothing about cars. I learned how to boost a car like 2 weeks ago because I left the car light on too long when I was camping and we ran out of battery, and I had to learn through a video how to do it. I'm an idiot when it comes to cars, but I could navigate rockauto.com damn well because it's so simple. It makes it easy for professionals and do-it-yourselfers alike, and it's saving you money as well. You might go to a chain store and get charged like, I don't know, for example, $350 for a Honda Odyssey fuel pump because that's what they've written in the copy. Guess what? When you go to rockauto.com, you're getting that exact same part for $216. Maybe you don't have a Honda Odyssey. That's okay. You might have another car. They're going to have the similar price disparity when you go to rockauto.com and search for the parts. And then it's not just the cheaper price. You get more in terms of choice and options and specifications and brands and all that stuff, which makes you feel like you're in control instead of the mechanic kind of taking you to the woodshed and charging you for everything you're worth. Either way, go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box to know that we sent you as well. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you'll ever need at rockauto.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our pals over at betonline.ag. We're back and better than ever, and all eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back to start another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, betonline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 100% welcome bonus. That's a 100% welcome bonus on your initial deposit. Double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use the promo code NFL100, all one word, to get that special deal. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. They are your online sportsbook experts. All right, Freddie, let's round this out, shall we? We move into the upper reaches of ranking every Raptor. The next player to come in is OG Anunoby in at number 16, up from number 19. A little sort of addendum or change to the list I've made this year that I've long been sort of ruminating on and finally pulled the trigger this year is I moved Doug Christie up. He just feels like a guy who really stands the test of time. Second all time in steals, played 1 million games, had really good numbers for a long time. And I think he was unfairly ranked below the likes of Donyell Marshall, Tracy McGrady, and TJ Ford as well. And so I moved Doug Christie up to number 15 on this year's list from number 18 last year. And I'm feeling pretty good about it. I've got, again, OG at 16, one spot behind Christie. Probably set to jump Christie at some point soon here, but the longevity for Christie puts him at number 15 for me. Number 12 is Norm Powell, moving up from number 14, passing Amir Johnson and Antonio Davis. I do not do that lightly, but Norm had a really great season and a really long time of destroying the Milwaukee Bucks on the Raptors' behalf. Fred VanVleet is maybe the most interesting one I want to talk to you about here, Freddie. He moves up from number 13 to number 9, passing Damon Stoudamire, and Stoudamire goes down to number 10. And then Pascal Siakam, stagnant at number 6, still room to move up. I think he's going to pass Bosch at some point here, but did not quite get there this past season. And then Kyle Lowry remains at number 1. Not a lot of drama there. We don't have to run too long on Lowry or Siakam just yet. But I want to ask you first about Fred VanVleet. So I moved him from 13 up to number 9. He's passed not just Amir Johnson and Antonio Davis, but also Serge Ibaka and, as I mentioned, Damon Stoudamire. Am I wrong to put him ahead of Damon? It feels like it's time. Fred's been around longer. He's played more games. Damon's only played 200 career games for the Raptors. And while his numbers were excellent, I feel like the long-standing contributions of Fred have now kind of superseded Damon Stoudamire. Am I too sort of like quick to cast aside Damon, or is this a matter of not really having to hang on to those last glimmers of hope from the early days of the team and actually being able to embrace new guys who belong in the top 10?
I think it's exactly that. And I feel like I'm going to one up you even a little bit. I feel like you could have Fred ahead of Jonas and Jose.
Oh,
that's I know. And maybe not
spicy.
Jose, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, I love JV too. So it seems weird. Like I'm like bashing all my favorite people, but Fred, has a combination of like when I think of good Raptors moments, like one of my first go-to moments is, his battle cry in game 6. And he's a champion. Like, and he also now, I guess it's in the weird Tampa year, but he's the single game, scoring record holder. I said that in a weird way, but Fred, I know it was against Orlando, but that's his now. And that's deep into Raptors lore. And, it does feel weird, with Damon. And I think you bring up a good point of like holding on to these guys that like kept things going for us and like kept the torch, but we had a bunch of good years and then we won a champion. Or we won the championship, and then even the next year, where we ended up losing to Boston was like a really, really tight series where, I don't want to be too much of a homer here, but I feel like we could have beat Miami. I mean, maybe, but we could have went to the finals again, and I think we were closer than a lot of people realize.
Yeah,
and Fred is just like, he tore up Brooklyn in that first round. And Fred's just like a really, really, and maybe this is me looking forward too much, but if he averages like 9 assists a game this year, I'm not going to be very surprised. And I think he, more than anyone else, really is going to be the guy that carries like the attitude of Lowry forward. I think Pascal is like this like crazy Swiss Army knife, super talent guy that, I'm sure me and you both agree people are way too low on, but Fred is in my opinion, like no doubt the team leader. And, even last year, I think obviously it was Kyle, but for me after Kyle, it was Fred. And I even if Pascal was a better player, by the numbers, I think Fred's the leader. And I mean, it feels sacrilegious saying that he could be ahead of Jonas and Jose, but I think he could be. And Damon too.
Yeah, I think Damon, like, it's not enough longevity from Stoudamire, unfortunately, right? It's just 2.5 seasons.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not enough. And that's a bummer. Like, it sucks, but it's just kind of the reality of it. And that's fine. And there were lots of losses involved in those 2.5 seasons as well. You have to factor in the winning. Like, you could just do like a strictly statistical ranking of all these players, and it would be vastly different than what I have here. Like I have Ben Uzo at like number 98 or something like that, because that one triple-double meant a lot and actually was like the weird butterfly effect thing that might have set up the entire run for the Raptors in the back part of the 2010s. So, that gets him like a bit of a superficial bump, but hey, it's my list. I can do what I want. With Fred, like, I could entertain the argument that maybe he should be higher than Jonas. I don't think I can go there with Calderon just yet because of the longevity and because Calderon was like a borderline all-star as well. Was like for the longest time the all-time assist leader and all that stuff. Like I think he still has an edge there. Jonas, because of like playoff success, I think I could maybe get to Fred there, but I held off just for this year. If Fred does it again, I mean, he's probably going to pass both Jonas and Calderon next season, I would think. Like if he just runs back the exact same stat line he had last year and just is healthy for the season, I think that's going to be a pretty substantial jump for him. I guess the question for you, is there any world in which Fred finds a way to surpass Pascal in this list, because Pascal, I think, is like very clearly number 6 right now. I think Bosch, because of the All-Stars and all that stuff, the longevity, I still have him ahead of Pascal there. As much as Pascal has more sort of accolades than Bosch ever picked up, awards and all that stuff already, I don't think it's too far off. Like, a really great Siakam season could bump him into that number 5 spot, I think. But is there a world in which you think Fred passes Pascal? I don't think it happens. I think Pascal's too good, but some people value Fred more than they value Pascal. And as we've talked about, some people think Pascal is a lot worse than he actually is. So maybe this is a question that some other people are entertaining.
Yeah, I think Fred, could be the leader of the team and, the guy that everyone, loves the most. But Pascal has a couple things, you just can't ever take away from him. Like, especially as a Raptors fan, like all NBA, like, there's so few guys, in Raptors history that are all NBA guys. And as good as Fred is, like, I think Fred could make an all-star team if he just, he was almost like in that conversation last year for a little bit.
I think had they not had the terrible start, he's probably, one of those last spots.
Yeah. And I think like he could, I think he could get like, almost like they could rise together. Like, and they've done that. Those two guys, like they're very much connected, but Pascal, even the fact that he had like, Pippen style numbers in our finals run, like I know it's debatable between, Lowry and Pascal being the number 2 guy. Like, I think most people would say Kyle, after Kawhi, in that run, but Pascal was just like, if anyone doubts him, like, just watch him carve up, the Sixers in that first game, or, just how good he was in that Warriors series is wild. And I mean, I think people have come way too far on him where, they want him to be like a Tatum style kind of like, very methodical finisher. And he's an opportunistic, like, Sean Marion style guy. And I think that's harder for fans to appreciate, but for me anyways, it doesn't make him less special. And long answer, I don't think Fred can catch him, short of Pascal like having a horrible season, which I just don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one for sure. A couple last guys to hit on here. I want to ask you about Norman Powell, because this will be the last time that we talk about him climbing up the rankings. It's very sad. He comes in at number 12. Look, his numbers overall, a little bit less sort of inspiring than, Amir Johnson, Antonio Davis, guys like that. Even Doug Christie. I feel like so much of the last 6 years doesn't happen without Norman Powell. And so I'm compelled to move him higher than maybe his numbers suggest. Like, on numbers, he's probably like maybe even below OG almost. Like, he's not that high up, because he had some like pretty up and down seasons there. Some seasons where he was like the bane of Raptors fans' existence. That is obviously is well in the past, and his last few years sort of title run on were all really good. But like, there were some years there where it was like, really, we have more minutes to Norm? What the hell? And so like that, I understand if you think he's too high at 12, and if like it's sacrilege to put him ahead of Antonio Davis and Amir Johnson. But I just kind of think the number of times he owned the Bucks, the dunk against the Pacers, the insane seasons he had the last couple of years where he was just this efficient scoring monster, I feel like he's got to be in the top 12. I don't know. Am I crazy with Norm, or like, is this recency bias creeping in? That could very much be the thing. And maybe 5 years from now, I'm adjusting it like I did with Doug Christie this time around. But I don't know. This is the one I struggle with the most, I think. And it has always been a guy I've really struggled to place, because his stats don't tend to match the impact he's had on the franchise.
Yeah, well said. I feel like, I was agreeing with your points and your counterpoints. Like, I think if I had to just make a solid take right now, I would say I wouldn't have him above Amir Johnson, only because I feel like Amir Johnson was also a guy that, sort of like died for Raptors sins. Like, he really
his ankles in particular died for Raptors sins. Yeah.
But, like, long before, you had like Scotty Barnes and all these guys like walking around Toronto and like loving it. Amir was doing like the zombie walks and like he was like an analytics guy that people loved. And Amir, to me, it's unfortunate that he couldn't have been some kind of like deep bench backup during, our most successful times. But it's sort of negligible because I then, my own counterpoint is I really think it's special that Norm was, number 7 on that, or, he was in the top 7 of the guys who were in the finals run. Like those 7 guys to me are they're like extra special forever. And I think for that reason, it's fair to have him ahead of OG, even though, honestly, OG's appendix doesn't burst. And I feel like every series, all 4 series we had are probably going to be 1 game shorter, and OG plays over Norm for sure.
But
that's not how it works. Right. And OG got really unlucky before the playoffs started, and Norm stepped up. Like, he didn't have like Fred style moments in those runs, but like you said, against the Bucks, he was killer. Like just talk about a guy that's always ready. Like he was truly always ready. And I feel like, it was awesome that, in that bubble season, when he finally started, he was like, fine, I just won't miss. Is that okay? And he just like stopped missing and was on fire. So
for what it's worth, I think OG probably passes Norm if he has the season we're kind of expecting from him this year, because I think it'll be kind of heights that Norm never reached kind of as a two-way guy. Obviously, that's putting a lot on OG's plate, but, I think there's a real chance he has that kind of breakout this year. But yeah, the playoff success, I feel like I've weighed a lot heavier sort of putting these lists together than I ever kind of expected I would. I thought I'd just be like, well, straight regular season stats, this is what matters. But no, like the playoff stuff obviously is going to weigh on your heart a little bit and tug the strings of those rankings just a tad. Before we get out of here, Freddie, because we've gone a little bit long, I want to ask you for a prediction. And again, this is a prediction that will entirely be within my control, so it's a bit unfair to ask you. But if you had to guess right now, where does Scotty Barnes land on his inaugural appearance on the list at the end of next season? Malachi Flynn, again, for reference, was a rookie this past season, played 47 games, ended up 89. It's not hard to be pretty high on this list with one good season. Where do you expect Scotty Barnes is going to land on next year's Ranking Every Raptor version 5.0 of, I guess, 75 to come before I'm dead?
I'm just gonna say, fairly arbitrarily, I'm gonna put him in between Gravis, Vasquez, and Matt Bonner at 73. I feel like Scotty is a pretty special player. He might dribble the ball off his foot a bunch, but I also think he is just gonna do stuff that is like downright shocking. I think he's just physically is quite something. And I'm not sure, if Raptors fans who are too focused on their idea of what they think we need now in terms of Suggs, I feel like once that simmers down a little bit and people are just able to appreciate Barnes for what he is and what he could be, I think he's going to blend into, even if he has a poor shooting rookie season, I feel like he's going to blend into almost every unit, defense alone. And is just going to be also the type of guy that fans like too.
Oh, I mean, I feel like you mentioned like the Suggs noise. I feel like the Suggs buyer's remorse is gone just because of how well Scotty has endeared himself to the market.
The Jays
the Players Tribune piece, throwing out the opening pitch, eating jerk with Cardinal. Like he's awesome. He's there. He's fine. Everyone just loves Scotty, as they should. Scotty rocks. And I'm excited to see his ascent up this list. I think that's a pretty good pick. I'll come back and yell at you if you're wrong next year.
Please.
Or maybe I'll exactly put him in between Matt Bonner and Grievous Vasquez just for you, Freddie. We'll see. That's the beauty of being an authoritarian of your own list. I can do whatever the hell I want. But I look forward to seeing how the list shakes out next year with lots of new faces coming into town. I can't wait to put Goran Dragic way higher than everybody wants him to be, but he's going to be pretty good. I'm telling you, it's going to be, everyone's going to hate it. when he's like 60th, but everyone's gonna be
he's
like,
a good player.
He's pretty awesome. Yeah, like
he's still a good player, despite what a lot of people, the frustration there. Like, if he plays a bunch of Raptors games, he's gonna do some stuff.
Like, I mean, if Lou Williams is currently at 37, which is probably too high for Lou Williams,
yes.
like Goran Dragic can have a better season than Lou Williams. I know he won the 6-man and all that, but like he was also a nightmare in the playoffs. We'll see.
Nightmare.
If you want to go
Wizard
listen to
series.
yesterday's, we'll never talk about that again. I'm going to bleep that out.
Thank you.
But if you want to hear about Goran Dragic, I talked about him a lot yesterday on the Mailbag podcast, so go and do that. That's going to do it for today's episode. That's also going to do it for the sort of sparse posting schedule in the offseason, as Media Day is Monday, which means we are back to daily episodes as of next week, Monday to Friday. Every day will be with you. Freddie, you'll pop in for some of those episodes, I'm guessing, because I love having you on the show. Thanks so much for being here, man. Where can people check out all of your wonderful stuff?
Thanks for having me, man. I love this show. I'm a fan. I love doing it. Please check out my show, Confederacy of Dunks, at Dunks podcast. I also started with a fellow podcaster, who's been on your pod as well, Catherine Niker. We started a WNBA pod called The Pickup. And it's we're both learning about the WNBA, and it's a bi-weekly show. It's on the Sonar Network, and it's really fun doing it. We're having a great time.
That's awesome. We got to get Catherine on soon too, because Catherine rocks.
She's awesome.
Maybe we'll get the both of you on. We'll just have a little Freddie and Catherine fun.
We'd love that. Yeah,
that'd be a blast. Either way, Freddie, thanks so much for being here, man. Thanks to you, the listeners, for tuning in and subscribing on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. Again, free on all platforms, which is lovely. As many things go behind paywalls, we are never going behind the paywall. Yes, we have a couple ads to read, but it's going to be free forever, which is what we want over here on the podcast. So thank you as always. We'll be back again on Monday with a Media Day breakdown, probably later in the day episode, as I'll be at Media Day, and we'll probably post an episode after I get home from that. I don't know if they're going to allow me to record around the arena, but with COVID and everything like that, like I typically would, we'll see. Maybe I'll pull up outside the arena and talk into my phone for a little bit. Well, either way, we'll have an episode for you breaking down Media Day on Monday. Till then, thank you so much for tuning in. Now go and check out Locked On NBA, as they are recapping a crazy week in the NBA between the Wolves and the Sixers and everything else in between. We'll talk to you again on Monday. Bye-bye.